Welcome to Intuitive Transformations with your host, Sylvia Henderson, and discover tools, wisdom, and inspiration that will empower you to transform your life. Sylvia is an intuitive life coach and energy healer with a growing practice that is focused on empowering others to be more of who they want to be. For the next hour, join Sylvia and explore and unravel anything in the way of you creating the life that you would love to live on the OMTimes Radio Network.
Well, hello and welcome to the Intuitive Transformations radio show, where you will find tools you can use to change and transform your life on the OMTimes radio network, the voice of consciousness at OMTimes.com. This is Sylvia Henderson, your host, and I am an intuitive energy healer in Kirkland, Washington, just minutes away from Seattle, Washington. And if you would like to learn more about me and the work that I do, please feel free to visit my website at intuitivetransformations.net. That's intuitivetransformations.net. And while you're there visiting my website, please be sure to sign up for my newsletter and also like me on Facebook so that we can stay in touch, because I really do enjoy receiving information and notes and emails from my listeners and being able to respond back and really build a relationship and a community with one another. So, as you know, if you've been listening to this show for any length of time, that I have a very fortunate job as a radio show host. I get to interview a lot of really wonderful and talented people, and I've been very, very fortunate as a host here on OMTimes Radio to have been able to share really outstanding authors and healers and new thought thinkers and teachers with you who listen to this show. Most of the guests I have on my show are authors, so I actually get to read a lot of books, and I get to read a book a week, as well as other things in my life. And so it's a really good thing that since I was a little girl, I've always loved reading books. So in a lot of ways, this is just the perfect genre for me, doing radio and interviewing authors. So I get to read all of these wonderful, beautiful books with really wonderful, meaningful messages. And every so often, a book will cross my path that is special to such a degree that I know that the author was actually chosen to write it, because the message was so important for the transformation here on the planet. I've been honored to have hosted some of those authors on my show, such as Carolyn Mays, Pam Grout, Belinda Womack, Mark Allen, who launched New World Library, which is a publishing house, and many other amazing men and women who bring forth truth in such a clear and concise manner so that it can be easily digested, utilized, and aid in the evolution of the consciousness of women and men on the planet. So today is really no exception. I get to share with you a new author, and her name is Laurie McCammon. Her book is titled Enough! How to Liberate Yourself and Remake the World with Just One Word. What Laurie's book shares in common with some of the authors that I've mentioned is that her book brings forth awareness and insights designed to change the consciousness of mankind on a very corporate and collective level. So I'm very excited to have Laurie join us on the show today, because her message is simple yet so very relevant and so right on target, and it explains very clearly the chaotic and tragic events that we have been recently witnessing with increasing frequency and intensity that's playing out in our world today. But her message is one that is deeply embedded in the vibration of hope. Her message of enough within the pages of her book will allow you to identify with its transformative truth, its relevancy, and the inevitable, very positive direction that you and I and all of creation is heading into as we begin our first steps, fully embodying the Aquarian age of the divine feminine energy of connection, collaboration, compassion, and community, leaving behind the old stories of fear, of not enough, and all that it represents. Now, I don't want you to miss out on one more single minute of what my guest today has to share with us all. So let me tell you a little bit more about Laurie McCammon before I bring her on. She's an author, a teacher, a blogger, and she covers topics such as the divine feminine, indigenous wisdom, conscious empowerment, evolutionary biology, and heart-led leadership. She has been instrumental in establishing a number of consciousness-raising organizations, including the Women's Institute of Maine, Imagine the Good Foundation, and the World Institute of Social Architecture. Laurie holds a BA in biology and a master's in adult education with a thesis in transformational learning. Her articles have been published online by Soulful Living Magazine, Spiritual Renaissance Magazine, Inner Tapestry, Kosmos Journal, and Popular Resistance. Laurie McCammon facilitated many circles and workshops over the years and has presented the Enough message at the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women in 2013 and 2014. She is currently working with a team to develop an experiential workshop and course that complements her new book, Enough. Laurie McCammon, welcome to the show, and thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me on.
Well, I am just so thrilled to have you. It's such a treat to have someone like you here on the show. I'm very excited to talk about you and your journey and how you came to write your book and how intimately the energies of enough and not enough are playing out in the world today and in our own personal lives. So thank you for being here. My first question is, before we get into your book, is let's just start at the very beginning. Mm-hmm. You had a dream in 2011 that started it off for you. And so I was just wondering, would you mind sharing that dream with those who are listening?
Sure. It's what I call affectionately a divine download. So it actually happened in my waking state. I was actually sitting at a restaurant with a friend, which is the first time that's ever happened to me, where I received guidance outside of perhaps doing a meditation or some kind of really quiet time where I just hear something, it just comes through. So we were sitting at lunch, and all of a sudden this 5-sentence message came through. And it came through with tremendous energy, and that felt so beautiful and benevolent. And I think now that I understand why I was with someone, because these messages have always been for me. And this one was for humanity. And my friend that was with me is the friend that introduced me to all this work at the United Nations. So she just was so excited to hear this message and got excited with me, and that made a huge difference to me to understand what it was I was supposed to be doing with the rest of my life.
Wow. You also had another experience where you came across this beautiful feminine energy, and didn't you take on her garment, so to speak? It was like she was handing you a mantle, so to speak.
Yes. Oh, yes. That was a dream that I had, and I was ascending these stairs, and I met this woman, a very goddess-like woman, and she had this beautiful outfit on that reminded me maybe of a Greek goddess or something. So we went up these stairs, and she had me bathe in a pool of water about halfway up this hill. And when I turned around, she was gone, and one of her people that worked with her brought me clothes to put on, and I realized that they were hers. And then I continued up the stairs, and there was this council sitting. It was 90 people sitting in this circle in this big open pavilion area. And they were all talking about how to serve this planet at this time. And I realized that my role had been to sort of be a person that reports back on what's happening on the planet. And I stood up and I said, we have to do something. They need more information. They need more information. This all came well before the Enough message came into my life. And it took me a while to realize that the enough message was that more information, and that I really had to be a lot more careful about what I asked for, because it was, a big assignment.
It really was quite the assignment. And before we dig into that assignment and the message of enough, I just want to talk a little bit about the energy of not enough that mankind has been playing with for a very, very long time. Mm-hmm. Because as you point out in your book, the most common conscious and subconscious belief that civilized man has is that I am not enough. And I had this information come to me through, of all people, Tony Robbins. It's something it had not crossed my mind before about everyone on a very collective level was dealing with this energy. And at a Tony Robbins event that I went to, my most memorable takeaway from that, other than the firewalking experience, was when he said that the number one fear that people have is that they are not good enough. And the number two fear that people have is that someone is going to find out that they are not good enough. And that just really hung with me. And when I read your book, it just really brought all that back to my remembrance. And so I know we're going to go into a break in just a short bit, but when we return from the break, Laurie, I would love for you to elaborate on this issue, because I believe that the old story of I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, there isn't enough, you aren't enough, there's never enough, is at the root of a vast majority of what we are experiencing that's playing out in our world today, and that's being reflected back. So when we return, everyone, I'm going to have Laurie talk about that. So please stay tuned. We'll be back in just a minute.
The future of Internet radio is here. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
There is no death, only a change of worlds. Chief Seattle. Deborah Livingston is an award-winning intuitive psychic medium whose international services include mediumship, spiritual assessment, animal communication, and spiritual mentoring. She is a published author and a trained shaman. Deborah provides evidential messages from spirit and departed loved ones. Learn more at deblivemedium.com. That's DEBLIV medium.com.
Hello, I'm Miriam Knight of New Consciousness Review, inviting you to my new show where I interview the rising stars of the conscious awakening. We'll explore the many faces of consciousness and action and intriguing perspectives on life, the universe, and everything in between. Join us each Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern on the Rising Stars Show.
Come on, smile. Oh, honey, he's still not smiling.
Maybe he's not a smiler.
Yeah, maybe he's just not a happy baby.
Maybe he's just being a boy.
Or maybe he's teething.
Maybe it's just a phase.
Maybe he has autism, and we can definitely do something to help.
Maybe is all you need to find out more about autism. No big, joyful smiles by 6 months is one early sign. Learn the others at autismspeaks.org/signs. Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Sylvia Henderson with the Intuitive Transformations radio show on OMTimes.com. And I have with me today my very special guest, Laurie McCammon. We're talking about her new book, Enough, How to Liberate Yourself and Remake the World with Just One Word. And before we went to the break, Laurie, I had posed quite a few questions, actually. I wanted you to really elaborate on this whole issue of, we're not good enough, there's not enough, this lack and scarcity message that we've all been indoctrinated, so to speak, with.
Right. Well, it turns out, through my research, I found out that humanity has been living this never enough story for about 5,000 years. And that's long enough to forget that it's just a story. And, when we look at the universe that's been around for 13.8 billion years, what we see there is a very different story. We see a story about enough. Ecosystems are models of how to create enough with diverse species working together. Our bodies are an example of 32.7 trillion cells working together for the good of the whole. So we see that we've been on this track for 5,000 years that's at odds with our natural way of being. And I do say our natural way of being because even Charles Darwin, who coined the idea of survival of the fittest, never believed that humanity's true nature was one of competition and greed. In fact, when he wrote The Descent of Man, he mentioned heart or love 95 times and survival of the fittest only twice. So, we have this myth about that there's scarcity and there's no way to get around it and that we're not good enough and that there isn't enough for us. So I think, we forget to ask that because we're sort of in our own private hell around that of never feeling like we're enough. And it turns out that we are, by the age of 7, 70% of our programming that we receive culturally is negative and telling us that we're not enough. And that's a lot to overcome, for any of us to overcome individually. So my approach in this book is so different because the message came in, I think, as kind of a harbinger of the age that is dawning for humanity now, that our consciousness has reached a really pivotal and exciting moment in history where we no longer are buying that never enough message. We're starting to grow beyond it and really see all the cracks in that story and moving beyond that. So, when I give my talks, I often say to the audience, I pose the question, are you enough? And have people think about that for a little bit. And I think most of us, when, pondering that question, think something like this: I will be enough when I get my dream home. I will be enough when I'm out of debt, all of that. So, and we don't think beyond that to say, well, really, never enoughness is the equal opportunity disease. Even very wealthy people and very beautiful people and very thin people don't feel that they're enough. So we're not alone.
No, we're not. And I love how you bring that out, how you bring that up about, even wealthy people and very beautiful people. I have had stunningly gorgeous women just with very depleted self-esteem. And you go, what? How could you not think you're like, I'm going, oh my God, I wish I looked like her, And I mean, like model-esque, but it's interesting. It's so ingrained within the human psyche. It's not a logical perception. And there really is no measurement of what is, how do we know we're not enough? And it's just this comparison, constant comparing with one another, which is that competing energy of, are they doing better than me? Are they wearing that better than I? I mean, it's in our magazines. It's everywhere you look. It's about, no, you are not enough. And it plays into our marketing strategies out there in corporate America. So but I love that you speak of in your book that this is actually changing, and that also this not enough, scarcity, and lack is not found in nature.
Right. No, it truly isn't. It's not a sustainable strategy, and we're seeing that now. And I think that's part of what's hastening the consciousness is we're realizing that that these actions that we take when we believe in scarcity, we actually end up creating more scarcity. So a lot of the suffering that we experience on Earth today as human beings, as well as the suffering we bring to the natural world, is actually perpetuated by this belief in scarcity. We behave differently when we think we're under threat. And so we actually go to our fight or flight modality in our brains, and that bypasses our our higher capacities to reason, to think into the future, to notice subtleties, to pay attention to our inner psyche and world, rather than being so hyper-vigilant of what's currently happening around us all the time. And, obviously, one of the things I say is that if you're one who watches a lot of television, this isn't the time on the planet to do that. I mean, it's good to kind of know what's going on in general, but it really can cause a state of post-traumatic stress if you are a chronic news watcher. And as you mentioned earlier, all of our advertisement also is geared towards making you feel that you're not enough, that you need this or that product to, feel that you're attractive or successful or that you're protecting yourself. So this idea of being under imminent threat is an idea that comes out of this overarching idea of scarcity and not having control over our world. And we see that playing out in our political system right now, too.
110%.
Right.
Absolutely. And I love how you point out in your book that this old story is losing momentum because it is not sustainable. And I'm glad you brought up the whole political environment because one of the things, I just want to read a little section out of your book from page 33, if you don't mind, and I think it speaks to this, that it's not sustainable. You say, I believe that any message that incites fear, even if it is backed up by scientific evidence, which in the political environment's not, lacks the right stuff to motivate sufficient numbers of people to invest in it. Enough does not buy into the story that the future is bleak, that humanity is bad, that we have limited time and resources to make right what is wrong, and that you experience enough of a vision of abundance that includes more than what can be seen with the eye, more than we have imagined, more than we have through ourselves been capable of before. And many of the calculations that we have made up about running out of time do not account for unforeseen synchronicities. I love this part. Sudden awakening and breakthrough technologies that are part of our we are enough natures. And more importantly, you wrote, change made out of shame, guilt, or fear is very different than what is possible when we are guided by vision, love, optimism, and community. And I tell you, I wanted to stand up and give you a standing ovation for writing that, because this to me was like, okay, people, I just want you to know Trump is not going to win. I never thought he was going to be president. But this fear, anger, hatred, shame, and blame that is being spewed out there right now is really, to me, the last hurrah of that old energy shaking itself loose. I mean, I don't know what you feel about that. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely, I believe it is. I can't go into a lot of detail on this call here today about it because it's a little more involved, but one of the models I bring forward in the book is a model from general systems theory, and it's called general periodicity. And it actually looks at the history of human consciousness. And basically, those that are alive on the planet today represent what you consider like a bell curve of consciousness. So the what we consider like the mainstream culture, the kind that you see on television, would be, the height of the bell curve. And that is in a place of, as we would know, it is in this place having to do with trying to be a melting pot and trying to figure out how to be together. So it would be about sharing, figuring out, learning how to share. That's what we're doing as a humanity in the mainstream right now. And the bell curve that is on the left side is what the energies that are dwindling, and that is the idea of repeating. In other words, I want the world to look like me, believe like me, act like me, and I'm not comfortable with the fact that people are getting into sharing now.
Or that they're
and
different.
Then the leading edge is us. It's those of us who are leaning into this new future and the possibilities of the future. So we are so needed, those of us who are transcending the consciousness of never enough. We're so needed because we are actually pulling that whole bell curve forward into the future. And it's always moving, always moving. So
I love it.
That old energy is departing.
That is so wonderful. So let's go to the bright side. Would you mind talking a little bit about the enough message? What is enough, and how do we tap into this new emerging paradigm of enough?
Right, yes. So what I've learned about the enough message is that it's very simple, that the word enough is so commonly used in our life, our daily lives, that it actually can be a catalyst to our consciousness in every aspect all at once. So the message is very simple that I received, and it's easy to think of it as a cliche, but it's, I am enough, I have enough, we are enough, we have enough, enough. And it's the opposite of what we've been taught. And it came in with such a feeling of truth. And I think when we just think about that, every time we use the word enough in our lives, are we oriented towards enough or not enough? And that alone can open up our consciousness.
And what I like about what you just said is asking the question, because consciousness is designed to answer anything that you ask of it. And when you're present enough to even ask the question, it really does change things for you. And I want those of you who are listening, you might go, oh, wow, that's the message. It's so simple. Do not be deceived by simplicity, folks, because I want you to know this. The way she has written this book, it's much deeper than those 5 sentences. She really allowed you to unravel what enough really means. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the 10 qualities that she has listed in her book. It is a list of criteria of what enough means. Please stay tuned. Back in just a moment.
The cutting edge of conscious radio, OMTimes Radio, IOM FM. As difficult as it is to believe, there are places in Africa where human traffickers sell albino children and their body parts for use in magic rituals. Humanity Healing International is actively working in Uganda to change this paradigm. The Albino Rescue Project finds albino children who are at risk and places them in safe schools and environments where they can learn and grow free from fear. To learn more or to sponsor a child, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Do you have time to read that inspiring book or that blog post you've been meaning to get to? In your busy world, how do you improve yourself and keep your life going? I'm Lisa Kay, and my Between Heaven and Earth radio show can transform your life just by listening. Be uplifted with inspiring topics, positive stories, and ideas that really work. Between Heaven and Earth Radio is conscious living for your soul, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Hi, I'm Jimmy Buffett. How would you like to meet an endangered manatee? You can by joining Save the Manatee Club's Adopt the Manatee program. You can't take them home, but you can get to know your new manatee friend through the photo, biography, and information the club sends to you. And you can read updates on your manatee in the club newsletter. More importantly, your contribution goes to programs that are working to save manatees from extinction. It's easy to help. Call 1-800-432-JOIN.
Welcome back. You're listening to Intuitive Transformations Radio on OMTimes.com. This is Sylvia Henderson with Laurie McCammon joining me today talking about her book, Enough, How to Liberate Yourself and Remake the World with Just One Word. And Laurie, before we went to the break, I was sharing with everyone that this message is very simple, but it's very poignant, it's very powerful, and it really is quite transformative. I really encourage everyone, please get the book. It'll explain it so much more than the show ever could. We only have so much time to talk about this wonderful book that's just pithy with information and knowledge and wisdom. But one of the things that you did do in your book, Laurie, is you outlined 10 specific criteria that made up how you define the word and the vibrational energy of enough. But before we go through those 10, and I'm going to read them so you don't have to look them all up. I got them in front of me, Laurie, if you don't have them memorized. I do want you to share, though, briefly when you looked up the origin of the word enough and what that meant. And then I want to talk about these 10 qualities.
Okay, well, as I was finishing the book, it suddenly occurred to me that it was pretty audacious of me to write an entire book about a single word without researching the etymology of that word. So I looked it up, and I couldn't have been more excited about what I found. It comes from the Old English get, which means together, and na, which means to reach or obtain. In Hittite, it means raise. So together we rise is what enough originally meant. And so I got chills when I heard that. And that explains so much, because if you remember the 5-sentence enough message, it begins with I, but then it transcends the I and goes into the we. And that very last enough has an exclamation point on it, and it's really important for people to hear that it's not enough is enough. It's not the energy of separation, like I don't agree with that, enough is enough of that. It's about claiming a different future. It's about claiming enough for myself, the planet, the future, my family, my friends, everybody. So it's that energy of completing the process and claiming a new world and a new consciousness for humanity.
Yeah, and that just so resonates with me. So really, thank you for sharing that. So the 10 criteria that you have outlined in your book is, number 1, democratic, the intention to serve everyone equally. Number 2, simple, needs no further explanation or translation. It's pretty simple. 3, descriptive, not so general as to tell us nothing specific about the future. 4, relatable, something everyone can relate to from direct experience. 5, fractal, applicable to any endeavor, any scale, any culture. 6, causal, point to the root cause. I'm really big on getting to the root cause, not the symptoms. 7, coherent, tells a story that links the past, present, and future. 8, natural, in alignment with natural law as opposed to man-made. 9, measurable, we know when we have achieved it. And 10, positive and motivating, describes the desirable future. So let's start with number 1, democratic, the intention to serve everyone equally. Can you dig a little bit deeper for us here?
Oh, sure. You know, the energy of enough, it's like it's not enough unless it's enough for not only myself, but for other people, for the planet, and for future generations. If it doesn't meet all those criteria, then it isn't in the enough energy. And we're actually seeing this in some of the things that are coming online about the sharing economy, where it's called the sharing economy, but then we look a little deeper and we see, well, it's still kind of going on that old model of making a lot of money. I'm thinking of like Uber, Airbnb. You know, those models seem like they're about sharing, but really they're not 100% about that. So it helps you, when you think about these criteria, it helps you to really discern better about, is it the new energy of enough or is it the old energy of never enough, disguised as enough?
Right. And then what about simple? Needs no further explanation or translation.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, it's as simple as this one word, enough. And what I said earlier about just consider your personal orientation to that word whenever it pops up in your life without judging yourself about it. Just notice, are you oriented towards never enough or enough in the usage of the word? So if you could just do that one simple thing, it really does open up your consciousness to the possibility that you might have been in a very small box, a manufactured box of never enoughness, when the world is really much more vast. You know, because the natural world is all about enoughness. So we're
really is
that and rejoining. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're so spot on. I mean, I live in the Pacific Northwest where it's absolutely gorgeous, so we have a lot of evergreen, and I was just having this conversation with a very good friend of mine, and I said to her, I said, how is it that we see lack when there's nature all around us that speaks to abundance and opulence? And it's amazing, because it really is present everywhere we look, but we tend not to see it quite so clearly. So then number 3, descriptive, not so general as to tell us nothing specific about the future. So what do you mean by it must be descriptive?
Well, a lot of people are searching for, okay, well, if this story is not a good story, this never enough story, or whatever you want to call our current humanity story, what does the new story look like? And so, people will use a term like New Age or something, but that doesn't really describe what it is you're trying to create. See, enough is the kind of word that not only does it describe what's enough for you, like your enough is going to be different than my enough. So, and so that's part of it, but also that the kind of future that we're creating together is one in which there is enough for everybody, and we can all agree upon what that looks like. Whereas not everyone could agree upon, well, what does the new age look like, or the emerging age, or, I've heard other words that people will use that you really have to have a long conversation to understand. But this is very simple. If everyone has enough, then that's the future we're talking about.
I love it. I love it. And then relatable, something everyone can relate to from direct experience. And I think you kind of touched on that already with this last response, but
yes.
Is there more that you can add or feel complete there? What
I
about
just
fractal?
think we all have a personal relationship to that word, and it's very personal. As you mentioned in the very beginning of the call, it's very personal. So, and it's very universal at the same time. So it's important that we have a personal relationship with whatever it is we're trying to create.
And I like the energy of enough versus more.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's something about asking for more that is it just doesn't have that same energy and vibration, even if you're in a state of the illusion of lack in your life, or not having enough for your bills, or not having enough for love in your life, or relationships in your life. And if you just, because you don't know what that quantifies, that more doesn't really quantify it, where enough really does, because
right.
it's so specific.
Right. On the opposite side of that, some people think when they say hear enough, they hear kind of almost austerity, like it's almost about punishing, kind of. You've been too indulgent. You've been taking too much. We hear that a lot in the United States. We hear how indulgent we are, that we consume too much. Enough is a very specific amount that's satisfying. It's motivating because it fulfills you. And it's what serves your mission. Whereas if you understand how enough you really are, the things in your life become tools to then bring out your inner gifts and to serve the world in a very unique way to you. So it's a whole different relationship we're talking here about. What's enough is really specific, very, very pinpoint specific to you, and it feels very, very good. That's the important thing I want to say. It's what feels really good and really nurturing to you and very empowering to you and very liberating.
I love that, because so many of us have been taught to disown our desires. How dare you desire that, or how dare you want that, or you get what I give you, as children even. And so this gives us permission to actually, receive what we truly do desire. And so when you go into the number 5, I believe I think you've already touched on that as well. That's the fractal, applicable to any endeavor, any scale, any culture. And then number 6, causal, point to the root cause, not symptoms. What did you mean by that?
Everything points to the fact that when 5,000 years ago we departed nature's enough story, we started to create a lot of suffering, inequity, a lot of damage to the planet, a lot of exploitation. So, really to look at the root cause of all the structures that we've created, hierarchies and social strata. All of these have their root in that one original idea that there isn't enough for everyone. So if we can fix our relationship to that one thing, everything else will fall into place.
So how was that first idea birthed within the consciousness of man 5,000 years if there was not enough?
Well, it actually came along with the idea of agriculture, because if you think about it, when we were hunter-gatherers, we were cared for by Mother Nature. Basically, we're almost like infants. All our needs were taken care of, and we had to work a little bit, but basically the food was there, the shelter was there. In the agricultural age, what happened then is we took control of the means of creating enough, and there was actually a surplus. And so you would have thought that with the surplus there would have been even more than enough and lots of abundance everywhere, and that is not what's happened ever since. And the reason for that is that human consciousness was at the adolescent phase. Remember how I said we started out as infant and hunter-gatherer? And then when the agricultural age came along, that was childhood, because we were learning to repeat certain things to then copy the parent, Mother Nature, and be more and more competent at doing that. But you hit adolescence at the same time that this internet's here and all these high technologies, and it's a combination for doing accelerating damage to the planet, as we're seeing now. But the really great thing about it, that news is, what always follows adolescence? Adulthood. And that's when we take responsibility again for creating enough for everyone. We rejoin nature's story as adults.
I love it. Please be tuned, everyone. We're going into another break. We'll be back in just a moment. More of Laurie McCammon.
Bringing a more conscious lifestyle to your world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
This is Terry Van Horn, and I want to invite you to join me for my weekly radio show, Hailing Light, on OMTimes Radio every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On Hailing Light, we want to bring love, light, and blessings into your world. You can find out more about us at www.healinglightonline.com. Blessings.
I want to thank my mommy for loving me so much,
for taking me to the doctor when I broke my foot, for leaving me alone when I wanted to be alone.
And now, as a grown-up, I'm thankful for being able to take care of you, my dear mom, for taking you to your therapies, for understanding that sometimes you simply want to be alone.
Roles change without us noticing. That's why AARP gives you the information to provide even better care for your loved one. Visit aarp.org/caregiving. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Well, we're back. You're listening to Sylvia Henderson on the Intuitive Transformations radio show on OMTimes.com, the voice of consciousness. And we're talking with Laurie McCammon, and we're discussing the energy and the vibrational influence of the word enough and how it is where we're moving to. We're moving out of that I am not good enough into we are good enough. Yes, you are. And so, Laurie, I'm really glad that you, before we went to the break, you were saying that we've moved out of that adolescent stage into our adulthood. So this is encouraging because it's interesting when you look at what's going on in the political arena in the United States today. You feel like you're looking at toddlers, but it's almost like teenagers, too, also having a temper tantrum. Well, showing some blame and shame around. So, and then, some of the things that are happening also with some of the violence playing out. You mentioned about the PTSD, and I think, honestly, everyone has PTSD right now in the civilized world, pretty much, especially police officers, especially anytime you get pulled over by a police officer, especially anytime there's any kind of a heated debate on anything. People are not being present, and that's really unfortunate. But before we continue, I would love for you to let everyone know, how can they get in contact with you? How can they find out more about your upcoming workshops and what you have planned for the future with sharing your message of enough?
Thank you. You can get in touch with me. My website is weareenough.com. And on there, you can see all my blog posts and my calendar. And I have some upcoming things happening. I'm also on Facebook at laurie.mccammon.author and Laurie C. McCammon. That's spelled LaurieMccammon. And on Twitter at Enough Message. So yes, I'm starting a series of telecircles, which we do on the Zoom platform, a 6-week-long teaching course done that way. It's very intimate because we get to talk to each other. It's a two-way conversation. And I'm starting one circle on November 2nd and another one on January 22nd, and both of those are listed on my website. And I'm also going out to California in October. I'll be out there on the 21st doing a presentation at the Science and Non-Duality Conference in San Jose, California, and I'm going to be the keynote at the Gather the Women Global Matrix annual gathering as well, and that's in Los Gatos, California. Then I'll be speaking at the Natural Living Expo in Massachusetts. That's in Marlborough, Mass. on November 13th. So those are a few of the things that I'm doing.
Great. And this is all listed on your website, weareenough.com?
Yes, I have a calendar there, so they can search that and see if I'm coming to your area anytime soon.
Great. Wonderful. So how can someone, until they order your book and receive it, please order the book and receive it, before someone gets your book, how can, because I'm sure it's on Amazon, it probably Barnes & Noble, is it also, can you also do an electronic, okay, great, an ebook?
It's available as an ebook and as a paperback.
Beautiful. So what can my listeners do in the meantime while they're waiting for your book? Is it basically focusing on those 5 sentences, or what suggestions do you have for them so that they can start, with everything going on, at least calm their central nervous system and remind themselves that they are enough, and that, and we have enough and all of that, and especially like enough protection, enough sanity.
Oh, definitely. Well, I have a number of things I would suggest, and number one would be to purge your social media. If you're noticing that people are posting negative or contentious things, be bold and unfriend, because really, your time is so valuable. Your consciousness needs to remain pure at this time and steady. So surround yourself with other people who are of that new energy and consciousness of enough, and find a tribe. Find some people that you can meet with on a regular basis, whether online or locally, that you can just agree with each other to support each other's enoughness. Not giving advice, not giving any kind of other help, but really to listen to one another. And for that, circles are wonderful. So I would highly recommend that you find a circle. And there's a number of circle organizations out there that promote, including Gather the Women. It's all free, and they teach you how to do a circle and how to start a circle. So that would be a thing to do as well. And on YouTube, if you search You Are Enough, I've created a music and meditation video for you as well to just immerse you in that feeling of the new energy. You'll just feel it, and you'll see it, and play that now and then, and when you're feeling like you're not enough, and just remember that you are. You truly are. You were born enough.
And that really is the message that I believe every soul on the planet has come here to really learn on Schoolroom Earth, is that we are all enough. And it is about releasing that old conditioning, because, as you said, all of this is done even before the age of 7, and children are left to their own devices and their own discernment to understand their world and to make sense of it. And the conscious mind has to understand, or it just really can't find that place of peace, which is why everyone is so stressed, because they're trying to figure out, I don't understand this, and I don't understand that, and I don't know why this is happening. It's that conscious mind can't seem to calm down unless it understands. And for children, the best way for them to understand is to immediately think that there's something wrong with them. And this is about unwinding those programs. That's why I really resonated with your message, because this is what I see on a regular basis with many of the clients that I come in, that come in to see me. This is at the root cause. It is always about, as Tony Robbins said, it's the number one fear that people, and they might call it something else, but that's what it is. It's that I am not enough. I'm not pretty enough, tall enough, smart enough, wealthy enough, capable enough, dressed well enough, whatever, skinny, whatever the enoughness is, we just get stuck on that. And it's like a record stuck with a skip over and over and over again.
Oh, no, and you have to realize that we are not the noxious gas. We are the canaries in the coal mine. So we may have things that aren't going well in our lives, but it's not our fault. We were born enough. It's the culture that we've all ingested, all of us have, that tell us that we're not enough, that creates all this suffering for everyone. So just to remember that this is a bigger issue than us. We're not here to fix ourselves. We're here to remember who we really are.
Exactly. And then you also point out 4 enough streams from 4 primary sources. And the first one is you and nature, how to live sustainable forever. You and the subtle, how to utilize information and energy from the quantum field, which is really important. You and the interrelation, how to access the power and synergy of the we in order to mobilize global change. All of these are really important. You and the vibrational, how to directly access benevolent genius and inspiration. So can you just briefly, in the next few minutes, talk about that?
Well, sure. I mean, we talked about nature as being a source of enoughness, and it demonstrates it through ecosystems. And then I told you about how our own human body is teaching us how that works. It's part of that as well, this idea of cooperating and being part of a larger whole. And so we're learning that again. In terms of the subtle, it's really cool because, Eckhart Tolle talks about this thing we call object consciousness. So when you look at the night sky, you see stars, but you don't notice the space between the stars. And yet it turns out that there's so much more going on in the space than there is on the solid matter, always. It's the same with us. There's so much going on in the subtle that is just not breaking through because our consciousness can start to sense it. Yeah. So, and then the interrelational is very exciting. I can't really go into that right now, but once you come from a place of I am enough, your interrelationships with other people completely transforms, and you become fully available because you're not running the story of comparing yourself to other people all the time and being jealous and competing and trying to find safety. So you're able to fully be empowered when you know you're enough and be of service to humanity. And the vibrational, well, there's just so many exciting ways that we're all opening up to our intuition and to our divine and direct path to genius and inspiration.
Wow, that's really, thank you so much for sharing that. All of those just give me goosebumps because they're also relevant, they're also important, and you really can't access any of those if you're constantly in fight and flight. And so, as Laurie has already said, and I know some people are like, well, if I don't watch the news, I'm not going to be informed. if there's a tsunami or something. You know, like, trust me, if there's an earthquake or a tornado or a hurricane or a tsunami, you will be notified somehow, some way. But being tuned in to that lower vibrational energy, you know, we're so accustomed to it. It's like you talk about in the beginning of your book, this metaphorical frog and the boiling water story, that, you know, when you're, and you found that it wasn't really true. I always wondered about that story, that if you put a frog in cold water and you slowly turn up the temperature, it'll sit there and boil to death, whereas if the water's super hot, it'll jump out and avoid being burned to death. But the thing about it is we've been so inundated with all this negativity, with all this fear-based information that's coming to us through TV, through movies, through even through music sometimes, that we become desensitized to it. And it even takes more for it to get louder and louder and louder before we go, oh, that's really horrible. And that's what I feel has played out this last year in particular, is that all of these things have been going on. It's just all of a sudden it's blown up, expanded. So take heed to everything that Laurie said. It's time to disconnect and take care of you. Get her book, Enough, by Laurie McCammon. And Laurie, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute delight, my dear.
It's been wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening, everyone. God bless. Know that I think of you often, and I send you great amounts of love. I appreciate you all. Enjoy a wonderful, wonderful week. Goodbye for now.